I don't know if anybody out there can relate, but like I have a hard time with life sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes it's great, but a lot of times for me, it's really hard. And no matter how I'm feeling, like I always find myself like struggling with certain patterns of behavior. I find myself like stuck in like the same thing. That's how am I in this? And it's that moment where you're in it and then you kind of separate yourself from that situation and you look at it and you see it for what it is and you're able to then do something about it. Like you've now broken out of that circle, that cycle.
Every step that I take is another mistake to you. Caught in the undertow, just caught in the undertow.
On the morning of July 20th, 2017, the sun rose quietly over Palos Verdes estates, casting a pale golden shimmer across the calm Californian coastline. But inside Chester Bennington's home, an eerie stillness had already settled like a cold shadow clinging to the walls. The house, usually alive with the warmth of family noise, stood unnervingly silent, holding its breath as if aware that something irreversible had already taken place, something that would fracture millions of souls across the world. Hours earlier, Chester had walked through these same dim hallways, barefoot on cool tile, carrying the invisible weight of a lifetime of battles carved deep into the marrow of his being. Later, when authorities arrived, the soft hum of distant ocean waves contrasted hauntingly with the stark tragedy unfolding inside, and the world outside remained oblivious to the shattering revelation that would soon surge across headlines. Timelines. The man whose voice had carried generations through their darkest nights had lost his own final fight. Before that quiet, devastating morning, Chester Charles Bennington's story began far away from fame, far away from the global stages that would one day shake beneath his scream. He was born on March 20th, 1976, in Phoenix, Arizona, into a world that offered both tenderness and turmoil in equal measure. His childhood home sat in a neighborhood where sunlight poured generously through open windows. Yet inside Chester's young mind, shadows were forming at a pace too swift for a child to understand. His father worked as a detective specializing in child abuse cases, an ironic twist of fate that painted the walls of Chester's early life with a bitter contrast. Because despite living under the roof of a man dedicated to protecting children, Chester himself was enduring a secret suffering he was too frightened to reveal. He was a sensitive child, small for his age, with a voice that carried unusual depth even before music entered his life. He loved drawing, dreaming, and escaping into imaginative worlds where pain couldn't reach him. But the real world, filled with shifting family dynamics and emotional imbalances, kept intruding. His parents' marriage was strained, and their eventual divorce in 1987 cracked the last fragile layer of stability he had known. After the separation, Chester lived primarily with his father. Yet even in that environment, loneliness took root inside him like a growing, unspoken bruise. As the years passed, the interior landscape of Chester's life darkened. According to his own later interviews, he suffered severe abuse beginning around the age of 7.
When your home life is so weird, you kind of don't want people to see a lot of it.
A torment he kept hidden for years, under layers of fear, confusion, and shame. The pain twisted his sense of self, leaving scars that music would one day translate into raw, visceral power. He found solace in bands like Depeche Mode and Stone Temple Pilots, discovering something electric in the fusion of melody and anguish. These songs became a refuge, a place where he could release the ache that had no language yet. By adolescence, music wasn't just a passion, it was a lifeline.
For me, it's like I can live with life on life's terms. Like I can experience the whole spectrum of humanity and not want to get out of it.
School didn't offer safety. Chester felt like an outsider, often bullied, too small to defend himself, but too stubborn to surrender entirely. He drifted toward troubled friendships and destructive habits. Around 1992, struggling with emotional chaos, he began experimenting with drugs, marijuana, meth, cocaine, anything that offered a temporary numbness.
And there was a lot of things that happened to me as a young person that were really difficult to deal with.
Anything that dulled the echo of what he carried. The substances blurred time, blurred pain, blurred memories he couldn't silence. At home, his father, busy with the weight of his own cases, had no idea the storm building inside his son. Chester channeled the shards of his life into art with a desperation that felt both instinctual and necessary. His voice began to evolve into something extraordinary, shaped by trauma but elevated by pure, haunting sincerity. He joined early bands, pushing his vocal boundaries until screams ripped from his lungs like confessions layered in melody. By 1993, Chester found his first real musical home in Grey Days, a Phoenix band whose emotional edge matched his own turmoil. Their rehearsals were more than practice, they were exorcisms, moments where tears mixed with sweat, where Chester's voice turned into a weapon against everything that had ever hurt him. But Phoenix was too small, too limiting, too distant from the future waiting for him. Chester worked shifts at a local digital services firm, trying to keep his life afloat, while gripping tightly to the dream that seemed almost embarrassingly big for a kid from his background. Still, he believed in the fire inside him, believed in the power of the voice he was shaping through pain, and believed music was the only place where his story made sense. And in 1998, as if the universe finally decided his suffering had earned him one chance, one opening, one crack in the impossible wall, an opportunity arrived that would alter everything. The call from California arrived like a whisper of destiny that Chester could no longer ignore. A small band, Zero, had stumbled upon his early recordings. A raw compilation of screams, melodies, and pain that mirrored their own search for authenticity. They sent him a tape, asking him to experiment, to layer his voice over their unfinished tracks. Alone in a dimly lit room, his reflection catching in the glass, Chester sang with abandon. The voice that emerged was both violent and tender, a paradox that seemed too vast for anyone to comprehend. When Zero heard it, they understood immediately. This was not a man singing, this was a soul speaking, an instrument tuned to the frequencies of both agony and hope. By October 24, 2000, the world would finally meet Chester Bennington as the lead voice of Linkin Park. Hybrid Theory hit like an explosion, an album that felt simultaneously intimate and universal. Teenagers in bedrooms across the world screamed into pillows, played air guitar in empty living rooms, and felt understood for the first time. Tracks were layered with rage, loss, love, and desperation. Chester's vocal gymnastics, his ability to slip from a whisper to a roar without warning, became the heartbeat of a generation in turmoil. Yet behind the commercial success lay a man still wrestling with childhood trauma, addiction, and the suffocating weight of expectation. The stage was his sanctuary, but it was also a cage. The bars made of spotlight beams and screaming fans. The meteoric rise of Linkin Park brought new pressures. By 2003, the release of Meteora cemented the band's dominance in rock and nu metal, but the personal cost was mounting. Tours became relentless cycles of adrenaline and exhaustion, of performing while grappling with sleepless nights and unresolved inner chaos. Substance abuse returned as both refuge and curse, as Chester searched for ways to quiet the relentless storm of thoughts and memories that never allowed him rest. Those closest to him spoke of his devotion to music as both healing and punishing, a relationship that demanded everything and gave only fleeting relief. In interviews, he smiled, laughed, and reassured fans that he was strong. Yet according to friends, the quiet moments were often spent in self-reflection, battling the shadows of abuse, grief, and haunting insecurities. His personal life mirrored this duality. Marriage, fatherhood, and romantic relationships provided glimpses of stability, but they were interlaced with volatility. He loved fiercely, yet the unresolved trauma of his youth often erupted in ways he could not fully control. According to sources close to him, moments of tenderness could swiftly shift to frustration or despondency, a reflection of a mind and heart under siege. The world saw Chester as a vibrant, charismatic frontman, yet behind closed doors, he remained the boy who had survived abuse, neglect, and isolation, still searching for a place to belong. By the early 2010s, Chester expanded his musical reach, joining Stone Temple Pilots temporarily as a lead vocalist, exploring a different genre, a different stage, a different set of pressures. He was always chasing new expressions of himself, new channels for emotion that refused to be silenced. The experimentation was a testament to his restless creativity, but also a subtle indicator that the familiar arenas of Linkin Park, though beloved, were no longer enough to contain his inner turbulence. Each new song, each tour, each collaboration was a negotiation with the personal demons that had haunted him since childhood. Then came May 18, 2017, a day that would become a pivot of unspeakable tragedy and deep psychological resonance.
This morning, the music world is remembering rock pioneer Chris Cornell. Cornell died unexpectedly late last night. He was in Detroit and he was 52 years old.
Chris Cornell, a close friend and mentor, died by suicide. Chester, already fragile from decades of internal struggle, was profoundly shaken. Footage and photographs of him at the funeral revealed a man simultaneously broken and brave.
We're gonna come out and play heavy first, but in light of our dear friend Chris Cornell passing away, we decided to play our song One More Light in honor of him to start this off. We love you, Chris.
Standing amidst grief, he could articulate only in the language of music, according to those who knew him intimately. The death triggered reflections and memories that Chester had attempted to suppress for years. The lines between personal anguish and grief for a friend blurred, intensifying the inner turmoil that had quietly intensified over the months prior. In public appearances. After Cornell's death, Chester showed flashes of resilience, appearing for interviews, performing in tribute, and engaging with fans. Yet the duality of his existence, the public icon versus the private tormented soul, was never more evident. Some sources close to him observed a quiet shift, a sense of inevitability that seemed to hover over his demeanor. Those closest to him noticed him retreat into introspection, moments of silence that betrayed the inner battles no one could fully witness or intervene in. The same stage that had once been his liberation became a reminder of the relentless pace and unyielding demands of fame and expectation. By the summer of 2017, Chester Bennington's life had become a delicate balance of public adoration and private torment, each day a tightrope walk between the ecstasy of creation and the haunting weight of memory. The stages he commanded were enormous, his voice a weapon and a bomb. But backstage, he navigated an entirely different landscape. Friends and collaborators described him as both intensely magnetic and fragile, capable of profound generosity, yet harboring shadows too vast to illuminate with laughter or charm alone. His schedule had become relentless: recording sessions, rehearsals, interviews, family obligations, but it was within the quiet intervals that the turbulence of his mind became most visible. In glances, in pauses, in moments when the world thought he was merely resting. The death of Chris Cornell on May 18, 2017, cast a long, unrelenting shadow. Chester's grief was immediate and raw, yet he carried it silently into each performance, each conversation, each fleeting interaction with the world. Observers noticed a quiet melancholy in his demeanor, a reflective intensity that could not be masked. According to sources close to him, he spent hours alone, revisiting memories, reliving moments that had scarred him from childhood, connecting the unresolved trauma with the acute pain of losing a close friend. Some believed that the grief amplified a sense of inevitability. He had long been trying to escape a knowledge that certain battles were fought in isolation, and that sometimes, even survival required a strength that exceeded human limits. Despite the weight pressing upon him, Chester continued to perform with Linkin Park, channeling his anguish into the music that had become both his salvation and his cage. Fans sensed a heightened emotional intensity, a layer of vulnerability that made each scream, each note, each chorus feel like a confessional. In interviews, he spoke of recovery, of therapy, of the importance of speaking out about mental health. Yet the depth of his inner struggle remained inscrutable to anyone outside his most intimate circle. The paradox was palpable. A man whose words had saved countless listeners was himself trapped in a private night that offered no reprieve. The days preceding July 20, 2017, were marked by a fragile equilibrium. He spent time with his children, the moments tinged with joy and a desperate attempt at normalcy. Each laugh a fleeting reprieve from the shadows pressing inward. He filmed appearances for shows, engaged with friends, and seemed outwardly engaged. Yet those closest to him sensed a subtle withdrawal, an almost imperceptible detachment from the world he had shaped through music. In private, the memories of early abuse, compounded by addiction, grief, and the relentless demands of celebrity, created a storm that no one could calm. The paradox of his life, the interplay of triumph and tragedy, fame and fragility reached its apex in these quiet days. The night of July 19, 2017, and the early hours of July 20th, carried a weight that the world would only begin to comprehend in hindsight. Chester's home, usually filled with laughter and warmth, became a silent stage for a final act he had fought against but could not escape. According to friends and family, the day had begun as any other, yet the quiet intensity in his demeanor suggested the accumulation of decades of trauma, loss, and pressure had finally eclipsed the barriers he had relied upon to survive. The voice that had risen to scream over stadiums, the hands that had written lyrics like incantations to hold back darkness, could no longer keep the storm at bay. When news of his death became public, the collective grief was immediate and global. Fans, musicians, and the public alike struggled to reconcile the image of the man who had saved so many with the tragedy of a life ended too soon. Vigils were held, murals painted, messages sent across social media platforms, each a testament to the impact Chester had on a generation. But beyond the mourning, questions lingered. What had driven a man so full of empathy, so capable of channeling personal suffering into art that inspired millions, to a point of no return? What lessons lingered in the juxtaposition of his extraordinary talent and the private battles that claimed him? In the weeks leading to July 20th, 2017, Chester Bennington moved through life like a man carrying both the brilliance of a supernova and the weight of a collapsing star. He laughed with his children, whispered reminders of love to friends, and embraced fans in ways that revealed a rare generosity of spirit. Yet, beneath the surface, his inner world churned relentlessly. Memories of childhood abuse and trauma, intertwining with the crushing grief from the death of Chris Cornell. Some sources close to him described a quiet, almost imperceptible withdrawal. Moments when he stared without seeing, as if negotiating silently with ghosts from his past. He had fought so many battles publicly, yet the private ones, relentless and unforgiving, remained unseen, carried alone like a burden too heavy for even a hero's shoulders. Chester continued to record, rehearse, and perform, pouring every ounce of emotion into his music. Each scream, each falsetto, each lyrical confession became a lifeline not just for fans, but for himself, a fragile bridge over a dark, ever-present chasm. Yet, even as the applause roared in arenas and the world recognized him as a voice of a generation, the internal struggle intensified. Those who loved him spoke of a man who was generous, gentle, and profoundly empathetic, whose laughter could light a room, yet whose eyes sometimes betrayed a depth of sorrow too complicated to articulate. On the night of July 19, 2017, the familiar warmth of home contrasted sharply with the storm inside. The house smelled of coffee and the faint trace of studio equipment, a backdrop for a silent struggle that had been decades in the making. According to accounts from family and friends, Chester appeared outwardly calm, engaged, and affectionate. Yet the invisible pressure built from years of abuse, grief, addiction, and the relentless expectations of fame pressed against him with insidious persistence. The paradox of his life, vividly alive to millions, yet privately fragile beyond measure, had reached an unbearable apex. In the early hours of July 20th, 2017, that weight became too much. Inside the very space that had once been his refuge, the man whose voice had articulated the pain and rage of a generation ended his own life. The shock reverberated instantly across the globe. Fans wept, as though mourning a friend they had known intimately. Artists expressed grief and disbelief. Murals, candles, and vigils quickly appeared, creating a collective testimony to a life that, though tragically short, had left an indelible mark. Social media became both a shrine and a confessional, filled with stories of how his lyrics had saved lives, how his music had been a lifeline for the unseen battles of millions. Yet in the wake of death came reflection. People began to pass. The duality of Chester's life, the public hero, the global icon, the empathetic voice, and the private man grappling with decades of pain. Interviews with his family revealed the love, the humor, and the dedication he carried, yet also the fragility that had persisted, always underlying even his brightest moments. His death highlighted the cruel paradox of fame. A man capable of saving millions emotionally could remain in isolation with his own suffering. Chester Bennington's legacy, however, is not confined to the tragedy of his final act. His music continues to resonate across generations, inspiring artists and listeners alike. He redefined the power of vulnerability in rock music, showing that raw emotion, unfiltered and unafraid, could create connections stronger than any conventional form of entertainment. Each lyric he wrote, each performance he delivered, is a testament to the fact that the human spirit, though fragile, can create beauty, catharsis, and unity even from the deepest pain. And so, as the echoes of his voice continue to rise from speakers, headphones, and memories worldwide, Chester remains immortal, not merely as a figure of grief, but as a symbol of resilience, honesty, and the transcendent power of art born from suffering. His story serves as a haunting reminder that the battles unseen are often the hardest fought, that empathy and strength can coexist with vulnerability, and that even in loss there exists a voice capable of inspiring hope. In the wake of July 20, 2017, the world struggled to comprehend the magnitude of Chester Bennington's absence. News outlets, fans, and fellow musicians attempted to frame the tragedy, to find a narrative that could contain the complexity of a man whose life was both public and painfully private. Social media became a mosaic of grief. Fans shared stories of personal salvation through lyrics, concerts, and interviews. Strangers found solidarity in their mourning. Strangers became a temporary family, united by a voice that had articulated what so many could not. The world mourned not just a musician, but a beacon who had helped countless people navigate the darkness of their own lives. Yet, the mystery of Chester Bennington is not solely defined by the circumstances of his death. It resides in the tensions, contradictions, and depths of his existence, the simultaneous brilliance and fragility that shaped every note he sang. He was a man who had endured unimaginable pain and transformed it into art that resonated globally. He wrestled with addiction and trauma, yet he cultivated empathy, generosity, and a relentless dedication to his craft. These paradoxes made him both relatable and enigmatic, a human being whose life could not be distilled into simple terms or cliches. According to those who knew him, Chester was acutely aware of his inner darkness, and he fought to channel it constructively, to provide catharsis for others, even when he could not fully exercise it himself. The legacy of Chester Bennington is vast, layered, and ongoing. He revolutionized the way vulnerability is expressed in rock music, redefining what it means to scream, to confess, and to connect through raw emotion. His lyrics were more than words. They were incantations for survival, offering solace to anyone who felt isolated, rejected, or invisible. Even today, songs like Crawling, In the End, and Numb echo in the hearts of millions. Their meaning amplified by the knowledge that the singer himself had endured the pain he articulated so powerfully. Each note, each chord, each scream remains a testament to the beauty that can emerge from suffering. A permanent imprint on the cultural landscape of the 21st century. Beyond music, Chester's story has sparked critical conversations about mental health, trauma, and the pressures of fame. His life reminds us that success, wealth, and adoration do not shield individuals from pain, and that the bravest battles are often fought quietly, without applause or recognition. Tributes, documentaries, and charity initiatives inspired by his life continued to raise awareness, offering practical support to those grappling with depression, addiction, and trauma. In these ways, Chester Bennington's influence extends far beyond the stage, beyond the microphone, and into the lives of people who will never forget the man who gave them voice when they could not find their own. Yet, even as the world honors him, a haunting sense of mystery remains. What might he have created if the years had continued? How would his voice have evolved? His lyrics deepened, his performances transformed. These unanswered questions linger in the spaces between songs, in the echoes of arenas once filled with his energy, and in the hearts of fans who still look for him, in the rising notes of music he left behind. The beauty of Chester's story lies not only in his triumphs, but in the haunting knowledge that human fragility and genius often exist side by side, entwined in ways both illuminating and devastating. Chester Bennington's life, in the end, is a narrative of paradox, immense vulnerability paired with immense strength, private suffering woven into public inspiration, ephemeral existence, leaving an eternal mark. The quiet hours of his childhood, the tumult of adolescence, the relentless demands of fame, the losses endured, and the personal victories achieved all converged to create a story that is cinematic in scope, psychologically profound, and emotionally unforgettable. He lived fiercely, loved deeply, and created art that transcends mortality, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire, challenge, and haunt those who listen. And so, the story of Chester Bennington lingers in the spaces between sound and silence, in the crescendos and whispers of every song, in the memories of millions whose lives were altered by his voice. He remains a symbol of both the beauty and tragedy inherent in the human experience, a reminder that even in profound darkness, one can create light powerful enough to reach across the world. His life is a testament to survival, expression, and the enduring capacity of art to heal, console, and elevate, even in the face of unspeakable pain. Chester Bennington's voice continues to rise, unyielding, haunting, and eternal, a melody of vulnerability, strength, and the human spirit. The days after Chris Cornell's death, on May 18, 2017, were suffused with an unrelenting grief that seemed to embed itself into Chester's very skin. According to sources close to him, he carried Cornell's absence like a weight pressing against his chest, a reminder of mortality and the fragility of the human spirit. Every note he sang, every interview he gave, seemed to vibrate with the echo of that loss. Even his laughter, usually rich and easy, carried an undertone of something fragile. A subtle tremor that only those closest to him could detect. The grief did not manifest in grand gestures but in small, almost imperceptible ways. A long stare at the horizon, a pause in conversation, a tremor in his fingers as he strummed a guitar, replaying memories and conversations in his mind. By late June 2017, Chester's routine was a precarious balance between obligation and avoidance. Days were filled with recording sessions, meeting with producers, attending interviews, and rehearsing for performances, each commitment a thread keeping him tethered to life. Yet beneath the surface, the storm raged quietly. The duality of his existence was stark. The world witnessed the energetic, creative, and deeply empathetic artist, while behind closed doors, he wrestled with depression, the cumulative effects of decades of trauma, and the suffocating pressure to maintain a facade of strength. Those who spent even a few hours with him described him as warm and generous, but with a shadowed intensity that hinted at the battles he carried alone.